Hi folks, I'm Billy Pennell. Thanks for joining me for another of my favourite musical moments. Of the many great bands to emerge in Los Angeles and San Francisco in the mid to late 1960s, Buffalo Springfield, Love, The Byrds, The Doors in LA, The Grateful Dead, Quicksilver Messenger Service, Jefferson Airplane in San Francisco, the most intriguing and musically ambitious was Spirit. With an eclectic blend of hard rock, blues, folk, country and pre-fusion jazz augmented by inventive orchestral arrangements on their album, Spirit sounded like no other band of their time. Formed in Los Angeles in 1967, each of the 5 members brought something different to the party. Guitar prodigy Randy California brought Randy Wolf, was taught basic guitar chords by his mum at age 5 and learned technique from listening to recordings and to some live performances by guitar players like John Lee Hooker, Doc Watson, Mississippi John Hurt and Rambling Jack Elliott. In 1966, 15-year-old Randy, still in high school, made a fortuitous pit stop at Manny's Music Store in Manhattan, where he ran into another young guitar player. Here's Randy talking about an event that could have changed both their lives significantly.
You played a lot with Jimi Hendrix way back when, like when you were just a kid.
In 1966, I was 15 years old, and I met Jimmy in a music store in New York. We had just moved back there, and Cass was doing a jazz gig somewhere in New York, and I met Jimmy in a music store, and we hooked up spiritually, mentally, and he invited me to play with him. That was his first solo gig at a place called the Cafe Wha, W-H-A, in Greenwich Village, Bleecker and McDougal. And we played for 3 months together, 5 sets a night, every night of the week except Sunday, until the guys from the Animals came down and the Rolling Stones, Chas Chandler, and they wanted to take him to England. Jimmy wanted me to go with him, but I was too young, too small. So I stayed. And we drove back in our green Chevrolet back to California and started up Spirit. So it worked out well.
Yeah, it worked out well for everybody. And by the way, Hendrix is where you got the name California, right?
Well, yeah, yes and no. There were 2 Randys in the band. One was from Texas and I was from California. So people in the band used to call me Randy California, and him Randy Texas.
By the way, was that Jimi Hendrix, or was it Jimmy James, or what was it?
The band was called Jimmy James and the Blue Flames.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that his name was Jimi Hendrix until we got back to California, and Barry Hansen, Dr. Armento, said, "Look at this new album." I said, "Well, that's the guy I just played with in New York. His name's not Jimi Hendrix, it's Jimmy James." And I put it on, I heard the guitar style, and I said, "Yeah, that's the same guy."
So, with the help of his stepfather, Ed Cassidy, who played drums with some jazz giants, including Jerry Mulligan, Art Pepper, Thelonious Monk, Cannonball Adderley, and later Ry Cooder and Taj Mahal, they decided that they would put together a band to be called Spirit. The lineup would be extended by the hiring of bass guitar player Mark Andis, who'd spent a short time in an early version of Canned Heat, keyboard player John Locke, who in his youth played in a band with Robbie Krieger, later to join the Doors, was an accomplished jazz musician, while Jay Ferguson, the band's co-songwriter and co-lead singer, was from a classical background and had studied arranging. The band released their first album in 1968, and although it got great critical acclaim, it wasn't a huge seller, but it did put them on the map. Unfortunately, they didn't get to play at the Monterey Pop Festival around about that time for whatever reason. And it's really interesting that about this time, Led Zeppelin touring America for the first time, and they're supporting Spirit because they're a new band from the UK. No one's heard that much about them. And they played a few shows with Spirit. And something really interesting happened that I want to draw your attention to now. There's a Spirit song on their first album called Taurus, which has quite a catchy, infectious instrumental opening. I'd like to play you that particular piece of music, followed by a song that Led Zeppelin recorded not long after, whose introduction was very, very similar to the Taurus song. Let's have a listen together. Unfortunately for the composers of Taurus, there was a court case where plagiarism was examined, and the court case went against the composers of Taurus, and what could have been a nice return for them didn't turn out that way. The band broke up after the release of 4 outstanding albums. The original lineup did anyhow. Ed Cassidy kept the band alive until 1997 with different musicians, until the death of Randy California, who died in a drowning accident in Hawaii while saving the life of his young son. Each of their 4 albums are still available somewhere or other. You'll be able to check them out online, and each one is a really strong album. Just the breaks didn't go their way, but the music lives on, and really had a joy today in being able to share some of the great music of Spirit with you. So let's go out now with Spirit live, and let's hope that you can catch up on more of this great music whenever you have the opportunity.
Started thinking inside your head that you should stand up and fight. Oh, just where will you be when your freedom is dead? 14 years from tonight. Those plexi-plastic doctors, they're your special friends. They see you every night. Well, they call themselves protection, but you know it's no good.